Welcome to Journey to Content Maturity. If you've logged in for the AARP seminar, I can see your confusion, but you've come to the wrong place. We're talking about content maturity on government websites over here. I'm Will Alford, Director of Content for Digital Services Georgia.
And I'm Ann Masters. I'm a content strategist with Digital Services Georgia.
We're here to break the news to you that your website's content is never done. As someone famous once said, possibly Lily Tomlin, sometimes it's credited to Arnold Palmer or some other dudes on the internet, the road to success is always under construction. They should put that on a coffee mug.
They did.
Would you look at that? Okay, jokes are over. Now that we've gotten through that. In this talk, we want to share some feelings with you, things we care deeply about, to be honest. We'll talk about information architecture, quantitative versus qualitative analysis, one of my favorite topics. And you'll share your experience last year working with the Office of the Commissioner of Insurance and Safety Fire, better known as OCI. And then we'll talk about how you and your agency can request a content engagement with DSGA and what that looks like. Then we'll take your questions. So let's dive right in. Information architecture. Well, first of all, what is it? This is literally the textbook definition from content science. A system for organizing content in a complex ecosystem that is often expressed in user experience and user interface. It mainly includes these four components. Metadata, that's like tagging and keywords and information you bake into the backend. It's not necessarily user-facing, but it helps digital platforms like search engines or social media algorithms see the content and surface it to users at the appropriate time. Structure models. This is what we often think about first when we talk about information architecture. These are your top navigation and footer menus, helping users find their way around, how to teach people in a split second to navigate the content they're seeking. Taxonomy. This is really a decision about what's best for your particular content. What are the buckets? We like to focus on services, but there's a lot of content that's informational or even repository like archives of meeting minutes that have to be made public. What are the attributes for these content types? What are the right choices for presenting these content types? GovHub has a developed taxonomy to help you make the right choice for the right content. And then controlled vocabulary. This is really art, avoiding government jargon and sticking to the most plain language in the fewest possible words, and sticking to the same terminology throughout. Keeping your word choice limited and consistent helps users navigate through because they won't have to wonder whether we meant the same thing over here as over there. Short, descriptive, consistent word choice. Your site's IA is its connective tissue, and it serves three main functions: to organize, optimize, and for wayfinding. To organize, that's knowing your different content types, establish a hierarchy of services, set yourself up for how you're going to do performance reports and analytics. Optimize for search visibility, for consistent language and terms, for your own sanity in trying to manage all of this going into the future. And then wayfinding. That's intuitive navigation, mapping out your users' journeys and achieving the happy path. That's the easiest straight line to the user's destination, hopefully on the first try. In thinking about IA, we first need to understand your content and your users as thoroughly as possible. And we do that through a combination of quantitative and qualitative analysis. Now, quantitative, to be honest, we've set you all up on GovHub with a lot of this, so you can see how you're doing all the time. This is information in numbers and metrics, your GovHub analytics dashboard, your gap score. And it's going to go deeper in the next few slides about how you can do your own content audit and access what users are searching for most. But that's only one side of the coin. The other is qualitative, and that's more about gleaning information through conversations and exploration. This is where you ask yourselves, or we ask you if you've brought us in for an engagement, about all your leadership's hopes and dreams. We dive into the content audits, do competitive research, and through structured conversations, together, we develop a plan for you that aligns your agency goals with how your users are really behaving and what their needs are. Let's go a bit deeper into this, Anne.
All right, Will. Hello. So as Will mentioned, for quantitative insights, these are at your fingertips now. Agencies who are part of GovHub can turn to GovHub Analytics, which is powered by SiteImprove. Many of you are already familiar with this main dashboard, which provides an overview of the quality and effectiveness of your website's overall digital presence. The higher the score you see here, the better your site's performance. You want to aim for 80 or higher. So, how can GovHub Analytics help inform your IA decisions? One option is to use it to audit the content of your website. By using the Analytics feature, you can access the Content menu and from there select Summary. This shows you at a glance your most popular pages and those with no visits. You can also drill deeper and get more information about what pages on your website are the least popular, see an overview of all the pages, find out how deep into the navigation your users are going, and so on. If you see a topic featured prominently in your IA that leads to pages with very few or no visits, then you may need to consider restructuring your IA. Should that item in the nav be replaced with a more popular topic? Does the content it leads to need to be improved or relocated? Doesn't even need to be on your website. Ask yourselves questions like these to figure out what information your users need, what actions they want to take, and how you can structure your IA to help them find what they need as quickly and easily as possible. Another way you can use GovHub Analytics to inform your IA decisions is by reviewing how users are interacting with your site's search feature. Once again, by using analytics, you can access internal searches, and here you can see the number of users who visited or used your search feature, how many searches were conducted, and also the number of search exits, which is how many users made searches immediately before leaving your site. If a large percentage of your users are relying on search to find content, that's a strong indication that your IA isn't providing them with an easy path, a happy path to the content they need. And you can get a good idea of the content they need by scrolling lower on the page to review a list of internal search terms that your visitors are using. If a large number of users are searching for a particular type of content, you want to consider bringing that to the forefront of your IA and your website. These are just some of the features of quantitative analysis that can help inform your IA, but this is only half the picture.
Qualitative analysis takes you to the next level. How it all comes together, because that includes the human factor. So here are a couple of examples of the types of activities, qualitative activities, structured conversations that we use to try and suss out the answers to these questions. You know, what is your leadership vision? How does that square with your users and our desire to serve them where they are? Last year, Anne was on the team that worked to bring the Office of Insurance and Safety Fire onto GovHub. And it was a massive, very complicated endeavor, and I'm delighted to have her share some key takeaways from that project. It's still something we're so proud of, and great public service work we did last year.
All right, as Will mentioned, the work we did in partnership with OCI is a great example of what this process looks like in action. OCI was particularly challenging because they're a large and complex agency that carries out a lot of functions across numerous departments. They license and regulate insurance companies and agents, investigate reports of insurance fraud, inspect buildings to prevent fire, issue permits for new construction and renovations, and they also offer consumer-facing content about different types of insurance, safety tips, etc. The list goes on from there. They do a lot. When it came to their website, OCI's biggest issue was that their staff was spending a massive amount of time on the phone with constituents, answering the questions and guiding them to information on the website. OCI was essentially acting as the IA for their website because the content was poorly organized, difficult to find, and it rarely included clear, actionable next steps for users to take. So users would quickly give up and call whatever agency phone number they could find first. As we started digging in, our research and analysis revealed that the site's navigation and structure were organized mainly around how the agency was organized internally, which didn't reflect how users moved through the site or the tasks they needed to complete. But before we could get a handle on how to restructure the IA, we needed to conduct a comprehensive content audit. So we worked with all of OCI's departments to put together a complete content inventory, from web pages to PDFs to applications and more. And together we decided what would stay and what would go and what could be consolidated. We also took a deep dive into analytics to determine what content was a high priority to users. We saw that the top 10 pages primarily contained information related to insurance agents and agencies. We explored the ratio of new users versus returning users and where OCI's users were located. As it turns out, more than half of the visitors to OCI's website were from out of state. We also looked at when people were visiting the site. Here, the analytics indicate the site is mostly used by professionals. When we examine user behavior, we discovered that half of all traffic went to the agent search application and agent's homepage. And even though the site has thousands of pages, almost 2/3 of the traffic went to the site's top 10 pages. And when we explored users' pain points, the analytics reflected what OCI and our team already suspected based on OCI's experience to date. Confused users were forced to call, they weren't finding the right departments, user paths were complicated, and overall, users needed better guidance. So, equipped with these insights, we began exploring and developing a taxonomy and IA for the site. We landed on 2 different options. To see which was the most intuitive to users, we conducted tree tests on each one of them. This is what Julie was referencing earlier. Tree testing takes users, in our case, users representing OCI's diverse audiences, through a specific version of an IA, asking them how they would use it to navigate to the information they need. So the final result of all this hard work? A taxonomy and IA that organized content around users' actions, rather than OCI's internal departments. We ended up with a main navigation that better reflects the audience and what they're trying to do. This allowed us to completely transform the website's navigation and design so that pages like this could become pages like this. The OCI website now has insurance information for consumers, regulatory filings for companies, licensing for insurance agents and agencies, inspections, permits, and plans for building and construction professionals, reporting and education for fire safety, as well as a services directory. And each section has its own submenus to make navigation within that vertical easier. And throughout the site, we included clear calls to action to highlight what to do next. So we know based on OCI's feedback that they're pleased with the site. In fact, OCI Commissioner John F. King said, quote, "I'm proud of the hard work of our entire staff to streamline the vast responsibilities of this agency into an easily navigable, consumer-friendly resource." So yes, OCI is happy. How about their users? Is their user behavior showing that they're easily finding the content they need? Yes. This heat map of the main navigation shows that users are quickly and easily finding the most sought after content, agents and agency licensing, and insurance resources. Our calls to action are equally effective, giving users one-click access to key services and resources. So, what are our 3 key takeaways from this project? 1, effective IA can support any volume of content. OCI's website contains a massive amount of content designed to meet the needs of numerous audiences. By organizing this content into a carefully structured IA, one that was informed by quantitative and qualitative analysis, we're able to guide a diverse array of users with numerous end goals to the information they need to complete a task. Takeaway 2, dig deep into your content. Our content audit wasn't just about what pages lived where and what content was outdated. We also looked at the various applications on the website, numerous PDFs and forms, and discovered that a lot of critical content was embedded in places that made it very difficult, if not impossible, to find. For example, we used instructions featured within application forms to create how-to-Is that we could then include in our IA. This enabled us to provide users with an easy path to step-by-step instructions on how to complete a task like apply for an insurance agent license or renew one. Takeaway 3, never forget, your user's end goal is your North Star. We had such a wide range of audiences. OCI is a regulatory agency, but they're also consumer facing. So instead of focusing on the type of audience, we focused on each audience's end goal. Where do they converge, diverge, and where do they overlap? It took a while to answer these questions, but we ultimately came up with 6 main navigation items that could help anyone who comes to the OCI website find what they need and do what they need to do.
That's really impressive stuff, Anne. I know it represents a lot of hard work by many public servants in the Insurance Commissioner's Office and in digital services. It took a lot of soul searching and setting egos aside to achieve the best website for OCI's constituents, both industry facing and consumer facing. And now I know what you're thinking. Wow, I want that. Come over and help us get our site in shape like that. And of course, we'd love to. Whether we have a formal engagement or not, you can apply these principles yourself internally and build a project where you go do a deep analysis of your content, and build out a roadmap for the future. So here's what that would look like. First of all, if you've attended GovTalks before or listened to Nikhil talk at any occasion over the last 10 years, you know that if you engage DSGA, we're going to want your website to adopt a service-first orientation. Every single one of us is delivering a service to the people of Georgia, and we need to understand and think about our work in those terms. Secondly, the first baseline measurement we'll want to make sure you're hitting is your GAP score. If you're not at 80 or above, we're going to need to tackle the issues preventing you from meeting that standard. And thirdly, we're not the experts of your particular content area. Your website is yours, and it's going to be up to you to execute on these plans and keep it up well into the future. So we like to look out 3 years and try to develop both immediate short-term and then longer-term ideas that you'll be able to manage and sustain. So to get in the weeds a little bit for just a few minutes, this is what a DSGA engagement looks like at a high level. Pre-kickoff, we'll identify the project team and who will do what, assign homework that you'll need to complete, and align on scope and desired outcome. Then kickoff entails at least one discovery session where we'll literally interview you about your work. At that time, we'll finalize the scope and timeline and define your agency's services or other agency priorities. Thirdly, this is where we go back to our desks and noodle over your website. We conduct a complete audit of your content, do as many other relevant evaluations that we can think of, and develop some key insights from what we've learned. We share all of this along the way with you, so you know and we know that we're all on the right track. Fourth is strategy and implementation. Out of this engagement will be a formal roadmap document with long-term recommendations. We'll also recommend things you can do right away, a list of quick wins. We may want to test some things with users, and we can talk about that if it's appropriate. And then we'll hand it over to you to go out and save the world. And everything doesn't have to be a massive undertaking like OCI. You can take small steps and make some very targeted improvements. Any improvements are a win. So for example, we recently completed an engagement with the Department of Driver Services. Their team came to us with a specific IA challenge. They're really good about tracking analytics and whether their users are finding what they need. And they thought that their mobile users were not finding what they need with their current IA. This is what it looked like. A lot of DDS's users access the site on their mobile phones, like all of us. And so that top navigation menu is crucial, since at least at first, that's where DDS users will try to find what they're looking for. The way license ID was organized wasn't working. Users were not finding what they needed there. The items listed weren't parallel or even necessarily equal in importance, despite sharing the same level in the IA. Before tackling just the license ID menu, we did feel like we needed to take a step back and get a holistic view of their whole site. It's important to have context when making a strategic decision because sometimes you can fix one problem here that creates other issues elsewhere. We collaborated with consultant Colleen Jones at Content Science. She's based here in Atlanta and is one of the leading authorities on all things content strategy. She's done content strategy work for the CDC, Home Depot, ShareCare, the Australian government, you name it. And she's really smart, and she helped us develop this process for working with agencies. We used DDS's challenge as a test case. We made recommendations, and we worked with them to identify short and long-term plans. We identified low-hanging fruit, the things they could do right away, and then we called out some bigger things that can be phased in over time and proposed a long-term idea to help keep the content aligned with users as things evolve in the future. The changes to their top navigation only recently launched, so we don't have good analytics for it yet, but we'll be watching, particularly with mobile users. You can see how that renders on mobile with the screenshot on the right-hand side of your screen. A redesigned homepage launched a week after this, and we'll be checking to see how everything performs and making the necessary adjustments. It is worth saying here that we focused on an issue that would have the greatest impact for the most users. Through our qualitative and quantitative process, it was clear that renewing an existing license or changing your address on an existing license are top services for DDS users. It's important to get those top-tier content areas right. Rather than taking users directly to a popular page, this IA approach is designed to set the users on the right path to find their endpoint the first time they try. Remember, About 80% of your users access about 20% of your content. It's really worth going the extra mile to make sure that 20% is as good as it can be. So, what have we learned on this journey to content maturity? Well, your website is a work in progress. It should evolve as your users' needs and your services evolve. Analytics can inform the evolution of your IA. A thoughtful and flexible IA assures you can accommodate future needs. And lastly, DSGA is your Sherpa on your journey to content maturity. So, on behalf of Ann Masters and myself, thank you very much. And we'll be happy to take some questions.